Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. And again, ask you once again if you'd like, share, and or comment on the post. We'll be very grateful. And then if you want to follow along, we'll be back in the 13th chapter of the book of Acts. And I want you to see with me this morning a very important principle for the work of Jesus Christ. Verse 2 of chapter 13 says, while they were worshiping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. So what we have here is then the first missionaries being called out, set aside for the work. But what I want you to notice is something very important. They were called and set out while they were ministering, while they were fasting, they were worshiping the Lord and fasting. And at that point, the Lord said, set Paul and Barnabas apart. In other words, these men were already being faithful. They were already serving already. They weren't sitting back, waiting, just doing nothing while waiting for an assignment. And to put that in modern terms and to think about that in our world, for example, a young man comes forward and says, I have been called to the ministry. God is calling me to preach. Then he may not be ready to preach or to pastor at that point. In all likelihood, he is not. But he should be working in the preschool department. He should be teaching a children's class, working with the youth, going to a rest home and speaking in a rest home. Something. He should be doing something, serving right now, not waiting until the Holy Spirit says set them apart. They were already working. They were already ministering. They were already serving. They were already faithful. They were already working for God before he ever asked them to do anything else. They were already being used, and God knows that he can trust them, that he can use them in the ministry because they are already working in the ministry. They're men of prayer and fasting. We see that in this passage. They're already spiritually growing, working on their own Christian life before God ever sends them out onto the mission field. And God still needs men and women who fit this bill. Before we can reach the outermost parts of the world, he says what? We start in Jerusalem. We start again in the preschool department. We start the children's department. We start cleaning the church bus, or sweeping off the church sidewalk, or vacuuming the carpet, or anything to get involved in serving and working for the kingdom before we try to be missionaries to Brazil or something. And what God still needs men and women who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty and be involved in the ministry. But so many are wanting to be Billy Graham. They want to be on, they want to start in a church with 10,000 members or something. And we learn here this model, again, that these men started, as we might say, started at the bottom. They start out, and this is not the bottom by any stretch of the imagination. When they're praying and fasting, that may actually be the top. But again, they bloomed where they were planted. Right then and there, they began to work where God opened doors. It may have been a small door. It may have not been, had they stayed right there, perhaps we would have never heard of Saul and Barnabas. Had their ministry not grown. But because they were faithful in a few things, then God gave them a bigger ministry. And so today I'd like to challenge you with that thought. Are you being faithful in the small things? Are you being faithful in a few things? Before we can hope to win the world for Jesus Christ, we need to ask ourselves, have we even witnessed to our neighbor? Have we won our own home, our own children, our own family? Are we willing to work in the preschool department? Before we try to get on the big stage, if you will. There's a great lesson there for us today that they were praying and fasting and working already, and then God sent them out to do these great things on these great missionary trips, church planting trips that we still talk about today. Something very serious for us to think about. Are we faithful in a few things? Have a good day. We'll see you here tomorrow.